Hey, how's it going? Sorry about the picture on my laptop. Not too sure what's up with the camera. Uh, Hoping to get it fixed, but that'll probably depend on when I get the money. But I'd like to share with you a message called Game Over. Before I get started, let me read Exodus chapter 14, verse 5 through 30. It's a bit long, so just hang with me. It's from the NIV translation, and it says, "When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, 'What have we done? We have let the Israelites go and lost their services.' So he had his chariots made and ready, and he took his army with him. He took 600 of his best chariots, along with all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh the king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites, who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen, and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and they were afraid. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, 'Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us into the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we tell you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It is better that we serve the Egyptians than die in the desert?' Moses answered the people, 'Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see them again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still.' Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the Red Sea, to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen.' Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of the Israelite army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from the front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night the cloud brought darkness on one side and light on the other side, so neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove back the sea with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided. The Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with all the water on the right and their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During that last watch of the night the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army, and threw them into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, 'Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting against Egypt.' They were basically saying, let's retreat. The Lord is fighting for the Israelites. He's fighting against us. Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the water may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen.' Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back into place. The Egyptians were fleeing towards it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had been following the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses his servant. Proverbs chapter 21 verse 30 tells us, no wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. Nothing can overcome God. On display in a museum in France is a dramatic painting of Faust. Faust is seated at a table engaged in a competitive game of chess, and at a first glance it looks like Faust is losing. His opponent in the game of chess is the devil. And the devil sits there, grinning smugly. He thinks he has victory in his hand. He is pointing at the chessboard with an evil leer, and he is gloating. And as you look at the painting, you can almost hear the devil shouting, "Checkmate! Game over! I win!" However, a person with a keen eye knows the game of chess, can see that the match is not over at all. As a matter of fact, just a few years ago, an internationally famous chess player was admiring the painting when all of a sudden he lunged forward and exclaimed, "Wait, wait a minute. Look, Faust has another move, and that move will give him the victory. The king still has one more move." Our King Jesus still has moves to make. Sometimes I think the devil is trying to convince you it's all over. The devil tries to come over and yell in your ear, "Checkmate! Game over! You have no more moves to make." And I feel like it's in that moment that there needs to be a spirit of a fighter that rises up in us and says, "Look at me. I might not have any moves left, but thank God I serve a God that still has moves to make on my behalf. It's not over until God says it's over." You may be struggling with relationships, finances, jobs, or whatever it is, and the enemy is telling you, "Oh yeah, that marriage, it's done. Game over. Checkmate. Oh, that career you thought was going to be awesome, but it hasn't worked out the way that you planned. How's that working out for you? Game over. Checkmate. I win. You have no more moves left. You're still young, but you don't have any more moves." You have to scream back at the enemy, "No, no, 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 no. My God still has a move. My king still has a move. It's not checkmate in my life because the king has more moves to make on my behalf. The king always has another move on my behalf." Let me tell you, life is so much easier to bear and get through at times when you realize the king still has another move. Man, life is a whole lot easier when you realize that God's not done working on you. God's not done leading you where He wants to get you. He is still making moves in your life, and it's time that our faith rises up and we really believe that. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 30 is a massive encouragement to every single believer. It tells us that no wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. You can wake up every single day, put your clothes on, put your shoes on, walk out the door, do what God has called you to do, knowing that it doesn't matter what the enemy does or says, because he will never succeed against God's plan for your life. Believe me, even on the enemy's best day, he will never succeed because God is for us and He's not against us, and He's making moves on our behalf. I love Exodus chapter 14. I want you to read it again and see what God has to say to you personally about what it says. The Israelite people leave Egypt and they find themselves at the Red Sea. It appears to be a dead end. And the Egyptian army is closing in and everyone's freaking out, but God still has another move to make. God's not done moving on their behalf. He makes a way where there is no way. Let that sink in. God makes a way where there is no way. Sometimes in life you find yourself and you find yourself at the Red Sea, and the Red Sea's in front of you, so, and you can't go back. But it also appears that you can't move forward either. You're thinking, "God, there is no way." But our God specializes in making a way where there is no way. I truly believe that there are those wow moments in life, and then there's those like no way moments in life. They're both great, but I think there's a significant difference in the two. Like the disciples catching a massive load of fish, that's a wow moment, you know. But there are those moments like Jesus walking up out of his grave 3 days later. Now that is a no way moment. The no way moments are the moves that God is wanting to make in our life. He wants to make a no way kind of move in your life. Just when you think there is no way I'm going to get over this, there is no way that God is going to provide this job, or there's no way that this marriage is ever going to work or be mended or restored, God says, man, I specialize in the no way. I specialize in making a way where there is no way. You don't know this? Have you not read my book? That's my specialty. God sees a move that you don't see. Sometimes when I really need a confidence booster, I'll play checkers against little kids. Don't judge me. Sometimes we all need a confidence booster. Don't try and judge me right now. You know, like playing checkers with little kids, it's actually pretty fun. They don't know anything and they barely know the rules, so you could totally be cheating the entire time, and they're like, man, you always win, and I'm like, yeah, dude, that's right. I mean, you could totally be cheating. They have no clue. You know, you see moves that they don't see. They're so young and immature that they they don't even see what you see. Understand this. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. He is always higher. He is always greater. And God sees moves that you don't even see. You know, you may be asking yourself, God, how are you going to do this? He sees the move. Or, God, how are you going to provide this need? He sees the move. God, I have no idea how you're going to accomplish this. Oh, believe me, he sees the move. The king always has an opportunity to make another move. I want you to look at verse 10 and verse 11. You know, does your dead end lead to prayer, or does it lead to murmuring to God? You know, verse 10 and 11, we see that the Bible tells us that they get to the Red Sea and they assume they're going to die and they're going to lose. And the mass of Israel splits up into two different types of people. Some start to pray and cry out to God, and the other group goes to murmuring against God and against Moses. My question is to you, when it comes to what appears to be a dead end in your life, which person do you turn into? Do you turn into a prayer, or do you turn into a complainer? What is interesting, even comparable to us today, is how quickly they forget the previous works of God. Have you already forgotten, Israel? I mean, it wasn't that long ago that, God just done all these miraculous signs, and he forces Pharaoh to let you go. I mean, have you already forgotten that? It's true for us today. Have you already forgotten the miracles that God has done in your life? Sometimes you have to remember what God pulled you out of so that you can have faith for what He's bringing you into. I'll say it again. Sometimes you have to remember what God has pulled you out of so that you can have faith for what He is bringing you into. Don't forget the miracles that God has done in your life when you get to what appears to be a dead end. I want you to look at verse 14. We see that the Lord will fight for you. All you have to do is stand still. God is telling Israel, just sit tight. I've got another move. Be encouraged. If God brought you to the Red Sea, then He's going to get you through the Red Sea. All right? He's not going to bring you to the Red Sea and just leave you there. Look at verse 19. We see that God is your front and rear guard. We see that there is a pillar of fire at the front leading Israel, but then as they get to the Red Sea, it moves from the front to the back to protect them from what is trying to chase them. God is protecting your future, But it's important to realize that God is also protecting you from your past, because it's your past that the enemy is always trying to throw up in your face and make you shameful of. He's protecting your future. He's got a handle on your future, but he'll handle your past as well when the enemy tries to bring condemnation and regret and everything else on your life as well. He's your front and your rear guard. Look at verse 25. We see that the tables turn when God sits at your table. Oh yeah. As the Egyptians come up, they're angry. They're seemingly, going to win, but all of a sudden they turn and start singing another tune. God starts to mess with their chariots, and they start crying out, to retreat, because God is fighting for the Israelites. And they're screaming, "Let's go back, let's retreat." God, God is fighting for the Israelites. He's fighting against Egypt. Let's just go back. Because they're realizing that God is fighting on his people's behalf. And the devil is the same way with us. He is fearful when God makes moves on our behalf, when God begins to fight for us. You want to know what's interesting? And it may just be me, but I find this extremely interesting. It's interesting that God would choose to kill an entire army of Egyptians, an entire generation of male Egyptians, by drowning them in the Red Sea. The Bible tells us that vengeance is the Lord's. I find it interesting because Pharaoh chose to drown an entire generation of Israelite boys in the Nile River many years prior to that. And you don't think God remembers? God remembers what the enemy has done to you. God remembers how the enemy has treated you. God remembers, and God is fighting on your behalf. Oh, God will settle debts. You best believe God will settle debts, and God is fighting for you. The king is making one more move. The king always has another move. It doesn't matter what the enemy says to you. God always has another move. We're sitting at this metaphoric chess table with the devil, with the enemy. And, you know, he he has, the appearance of victory. But what's interesting that we all know about appearances is that appearances can be misleading. All he can offer is the appearance of victory, and that you're, going to be defeated. He knows God still has one more move to make, and you may be asking, then why is he still fighting? Why is he still putting up a fight if he knows that God still has another play or another move? Well, why is he still fighting? And I believe that maybe he's doing it because, have you ever told yourself something so much that you begin to believe it, even though it isn't true? He's trying to tell you you're defeated, you're done, checkmate, game over, I've won. He's trying to say that over and over and over and over and over and over, to eventually you believe it. To eventually you just throw in the towel without allowing God to make that move in your life. The devil knows that he's defeated. He knows it. Even on his best day, he can't beat God. He can't, defeat you while God is fighting on your behalf. It's not game over. It's not checkmate. God always has another move for your life. Remember that.